wasn't all that light here lately. I had way too much stuff on it.
That's heavier than I would go.
Yeah, I had a sleeping bag though, so, you know, I used that.
That's one thing that said we will not do. We will stay in motels. There we get somewhere to wash our gear.
And
now, I've got no idea what that is.
I have no idea either. I think maybe a Hispano Suiza or something, Villahay or
Yeah.
Village, some kind of a French or Spanish car, very special, even then, let alone today. That's someplace in the south of France. I don't know exactly what city, but someplace. It may have been Monaco.
Certainly has a Mediterranean thing.
Yeah, that's along Côte d'Azur or someplace along the Mediterranean.
That could almost be Catalina, couldn't it, that way?
Yeah, nearly. I think this is a Condor, a Swiss copy of a BMW. It was along the beach there someplace, either in France or Italy, probably in France.
Are they telescopic boats, huh?
I believe that they are.
Rigid back end.
Yeah.
Big side valve, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Big capacity side valve.
A copy of a wartime BMW. The Italians made swinging arms almost immediately after the war, and there was a multitude of different ones made up. There were a lot of Tiger 90 Triumphs that were SD models that they refurbished.
I was going to say, isn't that a Triumph?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
What about the gearbox?
There's the other side.
It's a Triumph
It's
gearbox
Triumph,
as well.
sure. Yeah,
and Triumph primary drive.
Well, it's a Triumph motorcycle. They just grafted their own swing arm onto the back of the frame. It's even got girder fork, see?
Now.
They just took their British bike and made up the fender and the swinging arm and grafted it on there.
Now, there's another interesting feature here. Isn't that a torsion bar?
No. No.
Operating through a linkage, through a bell crank?
I believe that it was a spring encased in there using a bell crank linkage. And see the shock absorber, the friction shock absorber there? Like an Andre shock absorber.
Andre Hartford.
Yeah. But I'm quite sure that that's a compression spring with a rod in it. And much like the Moto Guzzi used, except they had a spring box under the engine.
Yeah. But the spring is in compression.
Well,
it's not a torsional arrangement.
I think that it's, no, I think it's just a spring, and it's probably got a shoulder on the rod in the center, and the spring would, there'd be a spring on each side of that shoulder so that it would spring either way. I don't think there was no hydraulic damping on it.
This uses a more orthodox spring.
Exactly, much like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just hundreds of them, seemed like. And then
this
there's
is twin overhead camshaft model.
Yes. Yeah, I met the south of France there at the French Grand Prix in Albi.
What would I give to?
Yes, nice. This twin picture here kind of shows the superstructure correctly. You can zoom in on that there.
Are you running?
Uh-huh.
Did I do it?
Uh-huh. I think it's catching the light on.
How's that?
No.
That better?
A little bit better.
Yeah, I didn't have a big camera, so I took 2 pictures to.
You know what I figured out? I just found out why we couldn't get the light right.
Why is that?
Yeah, that stupid thing was set on there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It should work okay now.
Yeah, just...
That was entering Italy. And I about fell off my motorcycle. I was going down the road and I came across that gal riding on the back of the scooter. In an evening gown with a corsage. Very nice. So I'm running along there about 50 miles an hour trying to take a photograph. Almost wound up in the canyon. There's a 4X 350.
All over that plunger back end. Actually, for what year was this?
1951.
Yeah, they're outdated for 51. You think of the suspension that Vincent had and the Bella said.
Right on the end of the plunger, but that was right up to the moment for that time.
So an end of an era.
The newest thing, but at the end of the plunger, and Tele Forks, it was a very clean unit.
It is a clean unit. What's the gearbox?
It's all unit construction. It was 4X. All the stuff was made by 4X.
Was that the time the Roland Schnell had gone there? Because he developed that twin-cylinder racing RX under his direction.
Yeah, but that was, you know, about that time. Schnell, as a matter of fact, was doing the development work at that time. And there's a picture of the motorcycle and the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Move it over towards you. Keep going.
That work okay there?
Yeah, down a little bit. Right there, center. Beauty.
I kept my camera in a little tank bag and my passport and all my things I had to have quickly. And
I remember that Triumph.
Oh, you can look at those. There's mostly around the Tower of Pisa. That's Romulus and Remus, the
Suckling the young human
wolf,
infants.
yeah. I don't know the wolf's name. Twins for Romulus and Remus.
Remus, yeah. The wolf doesn't get too much of a
And
mention.
Romulus killed Remus and founded Rome.
Yeah, that's right. That was the brake on that, front brake on that Horax.
That was quite advanced because it was
Yeah.
full width.
Yeah,
Or single
I know.
leading chute
Yeah.
by the looks of
I'm
it.
quite sure it is.
Yeah.
But it was a nice clean bike.
Very. At that time, quite marketable.
Totally enclosed chain guard. I mean, it was very well made. Very well made. Made those in Bad Homburg, Germany.
Does the company exist now?
No, I'm sure that it doesn't. It may exist as a manufacturing entity, but not as a motorcycle production.
By comparison with the Norton BSA spring heels, you know, it's got a little bellows
Yeah.
to cover the sliding part.
Here they tended to be a little more complete with some of their design.
What's the buy that? An old Roman one?
I'm sure it is, someplace in south of France. And, yeah, but that's pretty impressive. I don't know exactly what they've got from.
I showed the leaning down.
Yeah.
That was an experience, wasn't it, Trey?
Yeah, for sure. That's,
Interesting social comment here. The young, Italian? French boy wearing the European, more bikini style swimsuit, but you've gone over wearing the American boxer style.
Yeah.
Right. Quite a collection.
Well, it was a thing amazed me. The reason that I found these pictures was I was looking for a picture of something specific, and I couldn't remember some detail that I wanted to clarify. And I knew that I'd taken a photograph of whatever it was that I was trying to remember. So I thought, I had these, I took this photograph, and yet I couldn't find the photograph. And I said, well, no, it's got to be. So then I found this box of 35 millimeter negatives in rolls. And what had happened in England, they do a strip film. They don't do that in the United States, but they do it in England. And so I had some strip films made of some of the rolls. And then I picked out a few of the pictures and had them made into photographs, but only a few of them. So I found all these rolls of film, a lot of them that I never had any prints made out, ever. So I went and got them all done. And there you go, you can just look at those and I'll explain what they are. That's on top of the Tower of Pisa. I don't think they'll let you up there anymore, but at that time they would let you up for anyway. And that's on the rim, the top of the tower.
I think we made a film of this and called it a Yank in Italy or something. And the bell?
That's up there too, someplace. Yeah, I think that's on top of the tower.
Even the bell looks as though it's at a canted at an angle. The spindle line, doesn't it?
Hey?
Even the bell looks like it's canted relative to the arch.
Well, I'm sure that it is, so they cut a notch in the building so
Yeah.
that the bell would be...
Could still hang vertically,
yeah,
yeah.
and it would be vertical to the earth, you know. The bell's straight. The bell is straight, but the tower is not.
Yeah.
That's the way that is. Now, this is something, I don't know if I ever told you about this or not, but I saw this bicycle in Italy, and it's got Vincent suspension on it. They copied the Vincent suspension.
Swinging triangle at the rear,
Yeah, yeah, and
parallel rule at the front.
it's very neat. You could hardly notice that if you
Really.
weren't looking for it.
It's got an internal expanding brake too instead of a rim brake.
Yeah, yeah, like this, like on moped. Very steep angle on the fork. The bicycles have a little steep angle anyway. Must be something about 18 or 20 degrees.
Yeah.
This was a bike right there by the Leaning Tower. Some other Italian had come along, and it was a Triumph. But it had an Italian tank and an Italian brake, and that's where I first thirsted for one of those big wide brakes. And I think that was a Salvi brake. And
I've never heard of that.
well, a couple of years later, they were made in Milan, and a couple of years later, I bought a couple of them and brought them back with me.
What engine is that?
That's an M. That was made in Italy. I think that was a 250. Very. For some reason, the Italians go completely fast. When they get to a 250, they make all the little 175s lovely, but when they say 250 immediately, they go to about a 500cc chassis.
Yeah.
I have no idea why they do that. They tend to do that.
Could it have anything to do with insurance requirements then?
I don't think so. I think it's just that's Romulus and Remus
Statue from quite a height down.
from the top of the tower. And that was one of those 500cc three-wheel Gucci trucks.
Oh, they had one they call
see,
the 8.
that's it.
Is that what they call the 8? They had one they call the 8.
I don't really know.
That may have been a name they used for it in Western Europe.
But that was, they use those for all sorts of things, bakeries or the great places delivering lumber. I mean, they were a very good utility vehicle.
Probably would still be.
And that was a painting some artist drew, and I would love to have had it, but if they could give it to me, I couldn't carry it, so I took a photograph of it.
I would have preferred the original.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
Well, here's that.
That was a little scooter delivery truck.
Oh, by the way, did you hear that Vespa, is that Innocenti or Piaggio?
I think it's Innocenti.
Innocenti now?
No, Piaggio's Vespa and Innocenti is the Rappretta.
Okay, well they've now perfected an injector, direct cylinder injector, for a very small capacity two-stroke.
Yeah.
Claim the immediate result shows fuel economy equivalent to a four-stroke of the same size. Because we've never been able to inject directly in those small cylinders. They claim you can't do it on cars, but now they're on a small two-stroke
For fuel injection. I think that was a Sistalia, that car. Beautiful car.
Wasn't that designed by the son, Porsche's son, wasn't it, Dr. Ferry Porsche?
I think so, and I believe it was built in Spain.
And they made one model that was four-wheel drive very, very early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were one of the first people to make a successful four-wheel drive car, long before Ferguson would have done it. It's quite a nice shape, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That was classic.
The Italians have a flair for body design, anyway.
Well, you know the Z in the 280Z stands for Zagato.
No, but I'm not surprised.
Okay.
I thought it would be Berlinetta or Gia,
It's Zagato.
Pininfarina or someone like that. There's a challenge now for the Italian School of Design right here in Pasadena. But it's such a high standard now that it's having a worldwide effect.
Yeah.
And the Japan hired talent from the design center at Pasadena. Where's that?
Well, this is someplace in Milan. It was just a modern building. I took a picture of. I don't know. Maybe it's a telephone building or something. it's unusual what you think of. That's in Pompeii.
These are part of the original ruins of Pompeii.
Yeah. They've been there a while.
Yeah, for a while longer. Benelli?
Benelli, 507.
Oakham, chain driven.
Yeah. I think it was a trailer gear or something like that. I think it had 10 gears.
It was a pretty massive case.
Yeah.
Still patched. Oh, here's a better picture of it. Yeah. That looks like a Berman gearbox almost.
Wow. It certainly does look like a Berman, but I suspect that it was Italian. It probably owes something to Stevenage from, as I recall, those had trailer gears. Camshafts.
Expensive dude. That looks like an American V8 almost behind, Ford V8 behind the Audi.
Well, but it isn't. It's a European car, but it's reminiscent. It's probably a Citroen, but it's reminiscent of a 37 Ford.
Yeah.
Like that. 35 Ford. And that similar grill section. Now these were the pictures that I took on my trip just previous to starting to work at Vincent's. This was like in about June or July, because I started to work at Vincent's just about in July of '51.
Yeah, that was the time I was just getting ready to leave Vincent's when you came there.
Mm-hmm.
So Surtees must have been there prior to your visit, yes.
Okay. You saw these pictures last night. Now, what you should do is to probably tell me who the other people are, and I could write that on the back of the picture, and that would be beneficial.
Where is this?
This Branch Hatch, 1953, about probably June of '53.
Well, that was not long after it was first hard surfaced then.
Yeah.
It would have been a grass track previously. In the lead is Ted Davis with his regular sidecar passenger, Ernie Allen.
Who was the...
It was a Black Lightning, and let me have a look. At that time, I think he had a Watsonian. Can't see enough of it. Yes, just I can. I'm also that's a Watsonian. They later had some help from Garrett and another company whose name I can't just recall. I don't know who that is. It's no one I recognise, but this is Hale with a Morgan.
Hale.
I think it's Hale. It's certainly a Morgan. I think it's the Hale
What's
Morgan.
his first name?
I think it was Chris Hale. Put a question mark after the Morgan, because there were several imitations at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly looks like a Morgan.
Yeah.
There sure was a lot of specials.
That's exactly what was going through my mind. I can't place this at all. It's a very crude bolt-up frame. Certainly not racing lineage. I don't even know what that engine is. See the tack drive.
I think it's a Rudge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would
Looks like
make
a
sense. And the gearbox could be Rudge, yeah. Now some of these early Rudge gearboxes were very nice to look at internally. There were a double row helical herringbone gear.
I never saw that ever.
Very expensive expensive to manufacture,
Yeah.
but
Very
and of course at
quiet
that time
and
Rudge
strong.
were winning races, so now you can't tell from this whether this was what kind of cylinder head it was, because some of them were the 4-valve, either parallel or
Well,
radial.
most of them were 4-valve. Solidity makes them 2-valve heads.
Rather nice, the Japanese when they invented it.
Reinvented.
That's an interesting one. And this is strange, this Triumph. First of all, I don't know how anyone would ride it with a brake pedal right the way up there. To apply the brake, you'd have to pick your foot up.
Yeah. Yeah, I never did care for that kind of stuff.
That was a standard touring saddle.
Yeah, standard touring seat.
That made an excellent racing seat.
Yeah.
Just, you know, they were just a natural, logical evolution from the saddle and pillion seat.
The most interesting part of this is the fact the guy built a swinging arm point and put AMC jam pot suspension on, but the most interesting thing is he built a double front brake, you'll notice.
No, I hadn't noticed. I don't know what kind of brake he made it from.
It looks to me like it's two Triumph brakes.
Early Triumph, right, yeah.
Tight in, tight.
It's unfortunately selected AMC jam pots for suspension.
Of course, in that time, while that was about as good as you could get, they were certainly well built. They just didn't work as well as they would have.
And this is when the Formula One car people started buying up Norton engines.
Manxes to get the engine, while they had to buy the whole motorcycle.
Now, you imagine how much nicer that would have been if instead of having that Triumph engine in, it had the Triumph Grand Prix engine in with a parallel exhaust ports.
Yeah, but of course I'm sure they were hard to find those as well for the same reason. I think this belonged to a guy named Baker or something like that bike.
I don't reckon.
I think that's a Brands Hatch or Crystal Palace, one of the two.
I don't know who this is. Is this the same guy, Baker?
No, it's a different number. That's number 58. This is number 5. I don't know who that is either. There were quite a few of those around at the time. It was quite a popular thing. And
now, had that same set of circumstances occurred in America, they would have tooled up to produce larger quantities of those engines in order to make money, but Norton's didn't think that way.
I think this is Jeff Monty right there.
That is Jeff Monty on the 250.
Well, no, I think this is on the 7R. That's a 7R that he made he made the little frame pieces at the back out of plate aluminum and islanded it, and it was very nicely done.
Okay, I'll tell you what that is.
It's not the GMS stuff.
No, the GMS is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, Tommy Rock.
250 Tommy Rock. I'll tell you what I think that is. That's part of the Sport A-Key.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah, sure.
It stood for Surrey Private Owners Team. Yeah. Now this is one of 4 machines.
Well, there's JABS and that and Harry Bostock's Triumph and one other. I think
Jeff Monty's.
not Monty. What's
This
the other
one.
guy?
Phil Webb produced Jabs.
Yeah.
Just another bloody special.
Yeah. And there's
Harry Bostock
but
produced
the
another
other,
Triumph.
guy. What was the other Triumph guy's name?
Bostock, Harry Bostock.
Not Bostock. The other guy. The 4th guy in that equipment. I know his name well. He put a Norton oil pump on his Triumph. And
Dudley Ward.
That's it. A.J. Dudley Ward. And this is Jeff Monty. M-O-N-T Monty. And this special. 7R A.J.
Here's a top view of one with the tank secured by aircraft elastics or bungees as we call them. And that's part of the Sport A-Key.
Well, now I'm quite sure that this is Harry Bostock's motorcycle.
That's what I think.
Yeah, it's Bostock's motorcycle. I saw him at Borum.
Yes.
Borum, I think.
Yeah.
Isn't Borum just
Near
close
Chelmsford.
well, no, close to London.
Not very far out. It's out on
30
the
miles
Brighton
or
Road.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I think so. I
It's
think
in
that's
the,
where Harry Bostock motorcycle.
In the county of Essex. It was later converted to a test track for Ford. I went there to practice and they refused to leave, so they brought the police to remove me
Yeah.
after I practiced. Now here's an example of, first class example of people at that time who were inspired by the Featherback.
Yeah, well, that's Bostock's type.
But that is the Bostock Triumph. But look at the lovely gusseting he's done
Yeah,
here
oh
on the
no,
front.
it's quite nice. And I also see he copied the Moto Guzzi,
The brake
movement
pedal,
over the top.
yeah.
And he also copied the 7R for the foot peg arrangement. See that? That's
Yes.
on the 7R G50.
See, he's filleted the clutch, which we
Yeah.
all used to do in
Yep.
those days.
Yep.
And he's got a BTH KD1.
Yeah.
They'd use that as an alternative to the Lucas jump.
Well, it was much better, that British Thompson Houston unit, but they just never did make enough of them. I always liked the idea of having the gas tank low like that to get a good head of pressure even when you're low on fuel. Good idea. Yeah, he flung this away across the railroad track there for him.
Did he?
Yep.
Was that Burma or was it Warminster?
No, it was definitely either Blandford or Borum, but I think it
It
was
was Blandford. Surely. He rode at Blandford quite a bit.
Well,
Yeah.
the place was an old army camp,
That's
and they
right.
had railroad tracks around there.
That
But I
applies
think
to
it was
both.
Borum.
That
I think it was Borum. where I
Borum
was.
had no railroad tracks.
No?
No. It was purely airfield.
Okay, well.
So that could have applied either to Blandford or to Warminster.
Well, what? It definitely was either Borum or Blandford. It was one of those two.
Okay, it would be
places.
Blandford. Pretty fast.
Yeah, reasonable fast.
A right-hander called Anson's Corner by a coal yard.
Well, I was close to the railroad tracks, and there was a bunch of barracks along there where I was.
Had a good run up there with a 350 Gold Star. Jeff Monty won, I think on a Norton. I finished just ahead of Arthur Wheeler on a 350 Guzzi ex-works, which was, you know, pretty good for a 350 Gold Star.
No doubt in my mind.
Needed the check that I picked up to repair the bike. Having frame fractures.
S-P-O-R-T.
Bikini.
G-U-P-E. Surrey.
Private owner's team.
Private Owners Racing Team.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty neat to get that information down because, now you see that tank? That's a lighter tank.
Okay.
And they made those. Always remind me of a Frankfurt. That they were narrow. I saw a 7R with one of those tanks on it at Rams. And this is evidently like a coupe or a Jawa or something.
It's the EMC book, I think, not a straight book, and it's one that Joe Ehrlich brought in
Yeah,
there back to.
okay, yeah. Yeah, I think it's got EMC on the tank.
Yeah, it's an EMC book, split single two-stroke.
Yeah, I went and met him. He was kind of a horsey guy.
Strange man. He later got the contract to develop a two-stroke engine for Bristol Siddeley aircraft. And he hired Jack Williams away from AMC to work for him. In other words, to do all the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Jack. He was very quiet.
Quietly competent, you know, not terribly innovative. Okay, that's a better view of Brands Hatch of Ted Davis. That is his regular passenger in the Allen, and that is the Wattonian sidecar.
Looks like they're throwing him backwards there, don't it?
It used to run that way originally.
Yeah.
That was the original direction.
Counterclockwise, yeah.
It was,
Isn't that clearways?
yeah, I think so. It was just hard surfaced and was just a development from the original grass track circuit. When it was still a grass track, that was where the very first demonstration of the Boys Racer was made by Jock West.
Yes, I understood that. Ted Davis, and what's the passenger?
Ernie Allen,
A-L-L-E-N?
I believe so.
Okay, now what was the name of the guy that we went to Sheld's Waltz with in a little car.
The car was a
The
Ford
Prefect.
Prefect,
Yeah.
which was just a slightly fancy version of the Ford Anglia. But that was the very upright model. What year would that be?
1951 was when we went. So
That's right.
That was a fairly new car then. I don't know what it was. Probably 49.
In fact, I think what had happened, they brought their new series out, and they used the old design as an economy model, sold it at a very low price, and I think they called it the Popular.
Yes, it was.
It was the Popular, which was really in previous years had been the Anglia and the Prefect.
And
They now become the Popular. That had 4-cylinder 1172 water-cooled side valve engine.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's
About
right.
the size of a shoebox.
That's right. I won't forget the Sonny first looked at it. He lifted the hood to check the oil or something. So he said, "My God," he said, "that little bitsy engine's going to get us all that way." Looked a bit different to a V8.
What was his name?
George Rose. He worked at Vincent's
Well,
I think in cycle assembly. George Rose.
That's not the same Rose that did the 100,000 miles, is it? Different
No,
guy.
no.
George Rose. He worked in assembly. Huh?
Yeah. And Danny Thomas came with us, the sand racer.
That's what I was thinking about. Now, as I recall, Danny Thomas was from Lancashire.
But Danny Thomas was from South Wales,
From Wales, okay.
from a little town called Llangrannau.
Danny Thomas, and he was road test, wasn't he?
On road test at Vincent's. Yeah. He's now semi-retired and working as a postman or mailman, as we call it here, back in Llangrannau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, I told you that the kid from New Zealand came by a couple of times.
That was Ken Muford's son.
Yeah, that's right, John Mudford, yeah, John Mudford. He came by a couple of times. And now, incidentally, I made copies of all these pictures that pertain to their racing. Sent those to them, each one, you know, Ken and Perry.
Len Perry,
And Perry and
Rod Coleman.
Rod Coleman sent them all copies of those turkeys. Never even sent a card or anything.
Not discussing it.
A little bit of hassle, but then I think, well, I'm the world's worst for writing, so I'm lucky I sent them the countdown pictures and stuff. Well, I'm sure about that. That was interesting, though, that, you know, I felt that when I was writing, of course, Rod invited me down there a couple of times, and I would kind of like to do that, but I doubt that I'll be able to bring that to pass. I would like to go to New Zealand, though. I've never been there. And I've heard that, and I would like to do that one time. I really liked, Ken was quiet, but Len was full of baloney. You know, he was like a lot of
Well, Ken was very quietly competent. He really was bordering on works writer status. He did get an occasional works writer, I understand. He wrote 3 valve once, I think, for AJ,
Yeah.
somewhere on the continent. In fact, he was doing very well in one race, and a German rider crashed into the straw bales. And as Ken came through, the straw bales just fell on top of him. You know, and of course that ended his effort in that race. And don't seem to get any points for doing well prior to coming down.
Yeah, no, that luck has a multitude to do with results, good and bad. I only fell off my banks twice, and each time it was occasioned by some other ones. One guy run into a stack of 4 tires that had been bolted together and rolled it right out, and it just knocked my front wheel right out from under me. The other time a guy broke an oil line on a 650 PSA. And I thought, God, it's raining. I thought, Jesus, it can't be raining. The sun's shining. And it dawned on me it was oil. And the next second I was down.
Well, of course, the sponsors only ask, where did you finish?
Yeah. All right, now, I wanted to try to remember some more of the people. There was Jeff
Where at?
at Vincent's, the sales guy, the great big guy who went to South
Oh,
Africa.
Jeff Manning. He rode a big Vincent quite well. Not as well as he thought he would. Obnoxious personality.
Yeah, a little bit heavy-handed and a big guy and probably ex-military. And I think that he raced a 350 Manx in South Africa or something.
He may have done.
Seems like I remember reading about that.
Someone told me he died of cancer.
Shouldn't be surprised. And I'm sure it's
There was also a Jeff Manning. Manning was senior to Mainwaring.
Mainwaring. He was a sales guy.
He was a senior sales guy, a character you didn't see very much of.
Yeah, I remember we wore gray tweed suits all the time. Jeff Mainwaring?
Mainwaring, yes.
It was Jeff also.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't swear about the Jeff.
Mainwaring.
He was usually referred to by his last name. He wasn't a
Yeah, I remember him.
sort of grey figure that no one really too much interest in.
He spent a lot of time up at the pub.
Yeah.
Jeff Manning. And Manning was like in charge of the spares department, or what was he in charge of?
No, Manning had a variety of jobs. At one time he reported to Mainwaring
Yeah.
in a sales function.
Yeah, okay.
And then as the company started to diminish, he was fortunate to enjoy the confidence of the receiver, I think, E.C. Bailey.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, E.C. Bailey
he wound
was-
up in several slots, none of which he performed successfully.
Receiver. I remember that. You see, it was on my letters. E.C.
Yeah,
Bailey
stamped,
receiver
yeah, yeah.
was stamped on the letters that I got when I was riding in 50.
Yeah, that's right.
So they were in receivership before I even went there.
They went into receivership sometime in 1949. I came out of the army in 48 and spent a year working as a chemist again. And when I went down and met P.C. Vincent and Phil Irving and they hired me, I came back up to Birkenhead. I was over visiting the Vincent agent in Liverpool, which was, you know them, A.E. Reynolds, Ferry Street.
Yeah, Reynolds.
The Scott Hospital.
Tall guy with a little mustache.
That's the
Yeah,
guy.
I remember
That's the
him.
guy. And he did two things. He always supported the further development of Scots. And before the war, he built the Scott Reynolds Special, which was a Scott with a plunger rear suspension. He also had always sold the HRDs, and of course later the Vincent HRDs. And he also pushed for the development of the like small power units for bicycles. Not the Power Pack and Cycle Master, which you well remember, but the really small ones. There's one came from Italy, I think, called the Mosquito, which was 50cc.
Yeah, 50 cc's. It just bolted on, rolled on the
To the
tire.
bottom crank and rolled on the tie, yeah. It was very similar to what later became the Firefly, Vincent Firefly.
All right, now,
But,
didn't you have a Series A once?
yes, I had a Series A comic.
Oh, okay. Now you knew I had a Series A comic.
No.
Well, I did have. I had that thing for about 3 or 4 years, and my buddy talked me out of it. I sold some of his stuff for $100. I can buy it back now, broken. All these years later, for $4,000. Broken.
Do you remember which ignition system it had?
It had a Magneto.
Well, there were two types. Came with two types. It was a matter of luck which one you got. One was a Miller Magdino, which was a disaster. The task of keeping the armor together to stop it falling to pieces was near to impossible.
Yeah, well, you always had that with any Magdino unit if you ran it hard, because it'd sling a solder off all the stuff and, do all the evils they do. My Triumphs did that all the time. And so I got so that I had a quick disconnect. I had a quick disconnect on the electrical wires. If you pull the electrical wires out, it failed to make juice, so then it just acted like a little flywheel. And so it didn't get hot. And that's what I'd use when I ran it hard.
You know that run from Vincent's factory up to my home in just opposite Liverpool? I never made it without a breakdown. No once.
On your Comet?
On the Comet.
And it was generally electrical?
Always. In the end, I believed I'd solved the problem. I took the long retaining screws, there must have been 4 or 5 inch long, countersunk into the brass end caps of the armature plate, tinned the screw heads, tinned the countersunk hole in the end of the brass end caps, tightened them up, heated it to melt the solder and reset the solder, center punched it, ran a fillet of solder over the top of it, and they still came undone. That's almost impossible, but they came undone.
Must have been a vent shaft or some kind of vibration.
Some kind of vibration. It just automatically unwound them, whatever you did. The alternative was a British Thomson Houston. PTH built a beautifully manufactured device where instead of running in parallel with 2 spur gears like the most of the Mac dynos did, they had a bevel and it ran at a different angle.
Yeah.
The only problem was they were reliable, but they had a very low output. The design fault in them was the output was insufficient to keep pace with the demand. So you generally have battery problems.
Was the generator or for the mag?
It was the generator. The magneto part was perfect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
It wasn't a mag dyno though, or it was a mag dyno.
They called it a generator, but it really was a mag dyno. It was a magneto with a small DC generator on the top run off the bevel gear.
Well, now most of the times, bevel gears are troublesome historically. Harley Davidson did that once. They used a spiral bevel drive to the generator, and they were always going out. But they only did that about 2 years, 1 or 2 years, and then they went back to a spur again, and they had no more trouble. It's pretty bulletproof. Except historically, any DC generator with brushes, the commutator, gives more trouble than an AC alternator. What's happening? Just buzzing along, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll go for about 4 hours, won't it?
I think you get 2 out of it because it tapes in the slowest mode.
Okay.
It doesn't,
It
you can't change the speed.
You get the best picture in the slowest mode. That's still quite powerful,
Sure.
I'd say.
Even for us.
I'm just
Yes.
checking it.
Now, okay. What was the name of the kid that had the old Triumph? I saw him when I went back in '53, puddling across to the Fisher's Green Works, and he had about a 1914 Triumph. I stopped and took his picture of his bike, and he remembered me from working there, but I don't know his name.
Well, the 2 possible people. There was a man in charge of cylinder head assembly, an old man called Wiseman. His son was Jeff Wiseman.
Okay, it may have been his son.
He had an old one, and Jeff Wiseman was killed on a modern Triumph following a lorry along the A1 up a hill just outside Stevenage.
The load fell on him?
Load fell on him,
I remember
yeah.
hearing that story, but I didn't know who that was.
The other one was an irresponsible cat who lived out in the country. I moved out and lived with him, Michael Harrison.
Well, this guy had fairly long hair.
That was
and he was
Harrison.
a young guy and, pretty enthusiastic.
But do you remember there was one who was totally irresponsible, and he gradually wound up doing more and more menial tasks, and he was just a messenger boy driving MNK-14 with a sidecar and a box sidecar on it. He became a sort of long-distance errand boy, and he even messed that up to the degree where they had him driving a little brush utility vehicle, electric vehicle between the 2 factories.
Yeah.
Do you remember? You know when you came out to Ardley? They're the people I stayed with, he and his wife. He had an old Triumph. I think it was a Model P with a direct gear change lever.
I don't recall that. I remember coming out to Ardley that time. It seemed to me that Ted lived out there.
Ted lived at Cromer Mill, which was nearby, about 2 miles away.
Yeah. And the guy with the Triumph, old Triumph.
I think both of them had that. In fact, one may have purchased it from the other.
Yeah.
I think that affected both those people, young Jeff Wiseman and Michael Harrison.
But you think it was Harrison that got
Probably
that
Harrison, because he had a lot of...
Well, was the other guy a real bubbly, enthusiastic guy, or not?
No.
Quiet,
This guy was
quiet.
enthusiastic in an irresponsible sort of way. He would take an interesting old bike and run it into the ground.
Yeah. Well, now this thing was well done. It would look nice. It was painted and the glass was shiny. And I've got a photograph of it someplace. It's lovely.
Does it have the rider with it? I could identify the rider in a moment.
I don't remember if I took a picture just of the bike or the guy and the bike. I can't remember now. It's a
bike
color
in my...
slide. And, you know, I haven't got those handy. That's why I say that I want to do this. The next time we do this, I want to get out the things germane to that time. And then we can identify a lot of the stuff, because many of the times, you know, like it's lucky that I can remember some of the things I remember just out of my head. Well, especially after waiting 25 years to get them printed. You know, I didn't even realize that I had it.
Because we also trigger items of memory in one another, if you've noticed.
Exactly, sure. And, okay, you think that guy's name was what?
It was either Jeff Wiseman,
I don't think it's him.
or it was Michael Harrison. He had various nicknames which were mostly derogatory. For an Englishman, he had a rather dark and oily skin. He always appeared dirty, so he was nicknamed variously Marshal Graziano. Another one, because of his long hair, he was known as Rughead, because...
Yeah, I think that's the guy who had long hair.
Do you remember Jock Rennie? The Scotsman? Jock came up to me one day in front of everyone and said, like he said, I've had the fright of my life. I've just seen a wild man staring out of a hedge at me. So he was called a hedgehog for a while. Then Jock decided he had a head more like a rug, so he became Rughead.
Well, now, Jock Rennie, what
Engine assembly.
Engine assembly?
There were two. One was an Englishman who came down with him from Scotland, that came from Arbroath in Scotland.
Well, isn't that the Scotch guy, and he the one that loaned me the coat?
Very probably. Very generous, very decent man.
What was his name?
Jock. You know, we all call those Scotsmen Jock.
No, but I meant
Rennie. R-E-N-N-I-E.
But the guy from Scotland.
The Englishman that came with him, who married.
No, it's Scotch.
The Scotsman himself was Jock Rennie.
Jock Rennie, yeah, okay. J-O-C-K-R-E-N-N-I-E. There's a guy that said I, but I bet it's a garden in Aberdeen.
That's got to be Jock Rennie, because one of his famous phrases centered on the town of Aberdeen. You know that we consider Scotsmen to be frugal and possibly mean. Mean in the English sense of tight-fisted. Not mean in the American sense of bad-natured. If in Scotland you want to say someone's mean, you say that...
I bet it'd be Aberdeen in Aberdeen. I remember that.
Well, you call them an Aberdonian.
Aberdonian.
And his other phrase was, if you'd say, why didn't you buy a new one for that Jock? He'd say, oh, that's the Aberdonian way of living.
Yeah, okay. He's the guy that loaned me the DR coat.
That would be Jock, I'm sure. Another humorous remark of his one time was someone that we were talking about was apparently interestingly in pursuit of feminine company at the time. And Jock's retort was, I wouldn't trust him with a naked light.
Loaned me his DR coat so I wouldn't drown in England.
I'll tell you how you'd identify him. He lived at the Marquis of Lawn.
Yeah, he lived just down from the factory, about 4 doors or a block or not far in a rooming house there.
You know, maybe it was like he moved to live with that Englishman that came down from Scotland with him, whom I can't remember. He was a Triumph fanatic.
Yeah.
They moved to the far end of town, the south end of town, to the Marquis of Lawn, where they'd taken the long rooms up above, and they're pretty old, those buildings, as you know, and divided them into not really rooms, more like cubicles. So it was an inexpensive way of finding a place to stay, but they were very low on privacy, so I wouldn't go there with them. I stayed in digs. You understand the meaning of that?
Yeah.
John
Okay.
John Griffith.
R-E-N-N-A.
Okay. Excellent character.
Is this more up here?
I'll get a little more coffee, son.
Yeah, go right ahead, yeah.
Who else did you have a question on?
Well, remember the name of the guy in the heat treat?
No. No,
He used to let me go in there and warm my buns up before I'd go to work, so I wouldn't die. Man, it was so cold. Okay, what was the name of the two guys in the crankcase May?
I know the people you mean, and the only one whose name I can remember was Fred Furness, who later became a foreman replacing Bill Brown.
Fred Furness, and there was a younger one and an older one.
Well, the younger one also provided warmth for you in cold weather. We used to put a big half-inch steel plate over a gas ring and heat it up to get some warmth. If you remember, in cold weather they used to mock me because I'd take a British Army ammunition box and fill it full of trash paper and stand in it. So all those doors had a horrible draft underneath. There was also the guy who did the flywheels in there, Paddy.
Yeah, I remember Patty well, that flywheel. I've still got the little thing I made, got off the Patty.
Oh, for assembling the needle roller?
Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to see that.
I don't know where it is right now, but I know I've still got it somewhere. I've got a little box out in the shed there of little pieces that somebody gave in there. Some little strainers that went in the fuel line, and some little seals, some chevron seals to put on the hydraulic linkers for the shock absorber for the Vincent.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I know who that was.
Flywheel man
The
was...
guy who helped you there was a guy called Albone. Frank Albone, A-L-B-O-N-E. He was the guy who was, he was later replaced, but for quite a long time he was the only man building those Vincent shock absorbers. Now, he wore a brown smock, if I remember correctly. His name was Frank Albone, A-L-B-O-N-E. Came from somewhere in the...
And he was a shock absorber.
Yeah. He was later replaced by the guy that formed the union there. Obnoxious character whose name I don't remember.
All right, now, flywheel man, he was Paddy who?
I don't think he had a last name. They're born with the name Paddy if they're Irish, yeah. Paddy's enough, they don't need another name. He'd been taught a limited ability of crewing flywheels. Had no other applicational skills in life, but that he did well.
Yeah, he sure got pissed because it took me half a day to build my first thing, and I had them rollers all over the south end of the shop. And then so I said, screw this, I said, you got any aluminum? No, we ain't got any aluminum. And so I finally scrounged around and found a compression spacer. A compression spacer, and I folded that around a flat file and made that little tunnel.
Tool, yeah.
Then pretty soon I could put them on 8 or 10 at the time.
Yeah, well, you see, you made a psychological error there. Technically, of course, you were way ahead of him, and you're able to innovate and look at a problem and work out a solution. An ability he has never had and will never acquire. By coming in and doing that, you threatened him, because he developed. In fact, he used to carefully manicure his fingernails.
Oh, I know. I told him I couldn't wait him. He had a hell of a long fingernail.
That's right.
That's what he used to scoop them up and flick them on with.
And
it worked great.
Oh, yeah.
I told him that I haven't got time for wait for that. It'll take months. I'm going to make something mechanical.
When you did that, you threatened his security because he was the only man who could do it. And for you to devise a mechanical implement that could do it was an immediate threat to him. And I'm sure you didn't think of that.
No, I told him, hell, take it. I'll make me another one. You can do it fast.
No, that was not the important thing. It was not that he would be given the same implement. The important thing was he was no longer unique
Okay.
You were making it simple so that
Yeah.
any man off the street could do
Yeah,
it. You know?
okay, well, I didn't realize that, you know, of course, I was trying to solve the problem, you know, so I didn't have to sweep all them new rollers out. And you remember me saving all the gearbox gears, huh?
Well, there were problems. You're talking about the twin
G10
gearbox.
and G11, yeah.
Yeah. I remember they had G numbers.
A G9 or something.
It was a
Anyway,
G9.
There was two
Yeah.
of them that made it.
And the splines were too tight.
Yeah, and they had a box full of them underneath the bench. And I asked him, what about that? He said, oh, they're dumb.
Yeah.
They're dumb. What are you talking about? He said, no good. He said, they don't fit. I said, gotta fit. They're brand new. And I fixed all them.
What did you do to
Took
them?
me a day.
To the
Put
scale?
grinding compound.
Lapped them.
And beat them with the hide mallet back and forth.
Well, you had the same problem. You know this spline portion of the engine shock absorber?
Yeah.
Same problem with that. But they had other problems that were harder to fix. The sleeve nut which holds that on was often incorrectly machined in the
Well,
threads.
they should have made that nut much bigger. It always gave trouble. It was only an 1/8 wide. It always round off. And
I've still got the big socket. Remember the huge sockets we used to have with a T-bar about that long?
Yeah.
I've still got that. I tell you what I wish I had. You know all the screws around the primary drive case?
yeah,
We used to use an Archimedes screwdriver for that.
yeah.
You know, pump handle type. I've lost that. I had that for a while.
You can still get those occasionally. They're made, I think, by Stanley.
Yes, probably yes. It wasn't so much that I need one, but it was just a memory of the production engineering.
Did she fall asleep? Poor little girl shocked her heart out.
Tired now.
There you go.
Baby girl.
All right,
She needs to be fed then.
yeah, that's, I wanted to find out about that Scotsman today because that was neat. That
He
was
was
neat.
a very, very likable
Part of the problem is we
personality.
left it in the car. We were already in the turnstile thing.
I
feed her
quoted
though, she
him
wakes up
on
and put down
occasion as an example
Where'd you
of a
go?
man
Just to
who
put that in the bag.
would devote himself to a task enthusiastically, loyally, and but would never benefit from it personally to any great degree.
Game.
I pulled a prank on him once, which I regretted later, in fact twice. That guy that we agreed that we didn't like, Davis,
Yeah,
Bob Davis, brought in some rare breed of cheese from France or somewhere, and it was really an unpleasant odor, sort of, sweaty feet odor. And I stole a piece of this. And if you remember, these engines were assembled on trolleys on a line. And Jock was reaching over to get hold of something. You know how a pocket, when you reach over, the old side pockets
yeah.
would open.
Open up.
So I just popped a piece of this cheese in there. And we stood back, and Bill Brown had left by then as foreman, and Fred Flynnis had taken over. And he stood with me. And within 5 minutes, he was helpless, with tears running down his face. It was so funny that we laughed so much. And we watched, and the way it went was that just now, Jock was sort of looking round, and then would look at his shoes to see if he trod in anything. And
I gotta get my stuff over here.
then he'd look at the other shoe. Then he'd go to the guy next to him, and you couldn't hear the words.
Still on?
Then the other guy would look at his shoe. And eventually he found what it was. And of course he was
See you
very
guys
angry.
later.
He was particularly angry against me.
Well, you know, I had wished
You got my representation.
to have enough time
You left me with that?
to learn some of the machining operations, but I knew that I wouldn't have time to do that, so that's why I was told I wanted to go from the
Well, mine are somewhere else, huh?
and I had a chance at all that. Who was the guy that did the wheels?
I don't remember the name.
Okay.
I don't have
What was
to-
the name of the guy that did the teleforms? The
Hydraulics?
Yeah.
We'll just put all
He was
these in
from,
there.
I can't remember the name of the guy in charge of all cycle assembly. He rode in trials occasionally. Big, pretty beefy sort of character. And I can picture him very clearly, but I can't remember his name. If I heard the name, I'd recognize it immediately.
well, Garden City, that's where the guy lived that did the forms.
They're big enough.
Really, I don't remember that.
A little mustache and, And you remember we set up a...
Mom, you'll have to get this door. It won't shut. I don't know what the problem with it is.
I know, I'll do it. I know what it is. I've locked it open with the door open is what I've done.
Yeah.
That's where I got from post office.
Okay.
The guy who did the porting, polishing
Yeah.
of the Comet and Black Shadow heads, and who polished the connecting rods, was a great big beefy guy called Jerry Norse.
J-E-R-R-Y?
G-E-R-R-Y, Jerry Norse, N-O-R-S-E. And he had another Irishman working for him, who disappeared one day. He ran off with one of the secretaries at Vincent's and left his wife and kids and just disappeared.
And Norris was
In charge of polishing.
Rod Silver had.
He had no technical knowledge of what he was doing or why he did it. He was simply the guy who was put in charge and he got it done. He had no understanding of why.
Rod and Silver had polisher.
They also sometimes used to help out production by doing the aluminum cowling, magneto cowling.
Yeah.
Remember those?
Yeah, buffed them up.
That's right. One day he caught it in the mop. You know, they used to
Yeah.
make, they were laminated cotton
Yeah.
with an adhesive glue, you know,
Yeah.
a hot setting glue, and
Some kind
carborundum
Yeah.
as a different
Yeah.
grades. And he caught it in there and he went round into the guard, around the axle and the mop, bounced back and split his chin open. So he carried a permanent scar there from that incident. He didn't understand why they polish rods. Would you like me to relate an incident that happened with Jack Williams and him? You know, I used to carry a little three-piece magnifying glass in my
Now, wait a
pocket.
minute. Jack Williams was in
Development engineer.
yeah, the engineer, and he was in charge of the den shops.
Yeah.
The yeah, it's so hard to remember all that stuff. You know, they were running the Picador engine.
That's
on
correct.
there.
And that was fuel injected even back then.
Yeah, well, it had
But it
to
was
be
port
for
injection, yeah.
Bring black.
Yes.
That's the reason they
Yeah.
did that.
That was simply a V-twin Vincent with the gearbox cut off.
Yeah, and a bevel drive or something.
Yeah.
For the prop.
Bolted on.
Now, what do you say about Norris and Williams?
Well, what happened was I, had an agreement with PC Vincent and with Irving, and then with Jack. They passed it down to Jack that I would be offered the opportunity to work in every department, but I had to take whatever it was and just have to do it, which meant going in there. So the day came when I transferred in there, and I used to carry this small magnifying glass set in my pocket, and so they set about teaching me how to polish a rod. So, having polished my first Black Shadow rod, I took out my magnifying glass, went to a strong light and started looking at it, and to my absolute horror there were small cracks in there. I thought that this would produce the reaction of, well, that's why we do it, that this is the purpose. The Irishman that I mentioned who ran away worked in there at the time. I think his name was Mike. And he said, "What cracks? Let me have a look." So he said, "What are you using a magnifying glass for?" I said, "So I can see them." He said, "Well, if you can't see them with a magnifying glass, they don't matter." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Why do you think we polish rods?" He said, "You don't know? It's so the oil can drain back faster into the crankcase." So with that technical stupidity, I figured the only thing that I could do, Jerry Norse had no idea. And so I went to see Jack, which didn't make me very popular with either Norse or with Mike. And I said, "Mr. Williams," I said, "Look, I think you ought to look at this. I found this. If you like, you can borrow my magnifying glass." And Jack said, "Oh my God," he said, "if there's this one, how many more are there?" And I said, "Those people they're back in there don't know why we do this." And he looked me up and down and he said, "But you do, don't you, John?" I said, "Yes." And then many years later, I finally met some of my ambitions. I'm riding in the Manx Grand Prix. I'm standing alongside Jack in the paddock in the Isle of Man. And here he is with a G50 piston turned upside down, you know, with red dye in it and talcum powder and capping the end. I thought, my God, here we are again, looking at cracks between us.
Yeah.
But anyway, they didn't know why they were doing it at the employees of Vincent. They had no idea. Now, and even got another horror story much worse than that regarding the quality of Vincent. A guy on engine assembly called Alf Hill, who was really a low-grade fitter, brought in to do production assembly work. If you recollect, we had a slave cylinder on a bench which had an inverted piston with a diagonal slot cut in the skirt. And then we had a piece of piston skirt with another diagonal slot, so we could put a piston ring in a slave cylinder. It would register correctly at the correct angle in the cylinder because of the inverted piston with a slot in the skirt. Then we'd use a spare piece of piston skirt to push it down so it was correctly placed in the cylinder, then measure the gap with a set of feeler gauges. They all went, most people, you did this, went through the motion. What they used to do was take the piston rings off that came with the piston, which were, I guess, Hepworth and Grandage, and put well-worthy piston rings on. Then sell the Hepworth and Grandage pistons, Hepalite piston rings, through the spares department. Obviously a question of agreements they'd made with the suppliers. A new edict was issued which increased the clearance, the end clearance on the piston rings. I believe it was around 14,000. Now they took it from 12 to 14.
Most generally it's 3,000 per inch or more.
And don't they usually add 2 for air cooling or something like that? So he came over to me and he said, this piston ring clearance, what's it mean they're going to increase the end clearance? I said, well, you know the 12th hour you've been giving it, it goes up to 14th hour now. He said, but what clearance? I said, you know, when you gap the rings, or you check them to see that they've got at least that as a minimum clearance. He says, no, show me what's meant about it. Because he'd been at the factory much longer than I. It became apparent that he had never ever checked a piston ring gap. He'd assemble them and he'd never checked them. How many did he send out with inadequate clearance on the end of the piston ring?
Most generally they're about right, but once in a while you get them that are tight.
That was exactly the case. How many did he send out?
And as I recall, the damn piston ring gap was on the 45 too, on the Vincent.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. It wasn't a straight end gap.
Yeah.
It was a
Diagonal.
It was a diagonal gap. That's why the slot in the inverted piston in the slave cylinder was,
so you could get
slotted
a feeler gauge in.
diagonally. Yeah. But that was the sort of thing that existed on the lines. Also in that polishing shop, one time there we got a shadow head that Francis Beard had worked on. And it's one of the scruffiest, sloppiest jobs. He'd taken a rapide and was making a high-performance head out of it. And he had really done a horrible job.
Well now, were you there when the guy drilled the extra 50 holes in the cylinder head?
No.
You knew about that?
Don't think so. This doesn't sound familiar.
Well, I believe that the guy that did that was Craven, is who I think did that. For some reason, as I recall, it was Craven, Ken Craven. May not have been him, but it seems to me that it was Ken Craven. And he worked at Vincent's, and they gave him a job of drilling the spark plug holes in these cylinder heads. And he drilled them right in there, but he drilled them all on the wrong side. So there came to be 25 or 50, whatever the number was, machines with twin plug heads, but no twin plug ignition.
That's right. But what did they do? They just put
I just put a
aluminum plug in or something?
No, they put a spark plug in, put 2 spark plugs in and let her rip. Told the guy if he needed to, if he wet a plug, just to swap the lead.
Great.
Yeah, so he lost his job over that, whoever it was. And then I think they made the tooling idiot-proof so that you couldn't do that, which they should have done in the first place.
Well, I actually did do that to a head. I did have twin plug heads on my one time.
Working.
But it didn't produce any extra power.
No. It will do if you get it right.
No, we didn't have it right, obviously,
Yeah.
because it didn't produce any extra power.
It has the blend travel, and John's planning on doing that to our Panama.
It's much easier to do now because in those days the smallest plugs were 14 millimeter.
Yeah, well now you can get them down to 10.
Oh, well, I heard, I've never seen a 10 probably, I've heard that you can. I've never
Yeah,
had a
well,
10.
I've done in stock 10 millimeter, that's very small, 400 valve.
Makes it much easier.
Most generally you run down to a little annular, small torch on red and run it in.
Direct into the combustion
Yeah,
chamber.
depends on how close it is, how much space. Generally you don't have much space between the valve seat inserts.
Yeah. I should imagine that with the modern 4-valve heads, particularly radially disposed
Yeah, well,
valves.
then you got a central plug most all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
But theoretically, that's ideal, even though it would probably still work better with twin ignition because it would have the flame travel even.
Be interesting if you could take the flame, the ignition point, to say 4 positions on the periphery.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
Let it travel to the center.
Yeah.
Maybe we should work on that.
Don just built an ignition for a racer. Normally it has a Bosch ignition system off that inside the engine behind the flywheel. Does a hell of a job to change the timing. So he built a little drive off of the cam idler pulley and made a neat little plate for it to fit on it, the little electronic trigger on there. And when it leads up to the coils, boy, it smells like a bullet. And you know, it's right on the outside. As a matter of fact, later today I'm going to make a cover adapter for it. So you can use a Norton point cover on it, and then it'll just come off and you can set the timing after the button. Quick, really.
Means you could adjust that easily while it was running.
Yeah, exactly.
On
You put
a dynamometer or something.
Timing light on the opposite side. There's an arrow and a reference point that lines up, and you got it dead nuts. And then if you want to advance it and retard it, you just use some screws so you can turn that plate relative to the trigger magnet.
Do we have a mid-axle over here?
Yes. At one time, Axel had a place in Glendale. He rented a place from the guy who was the distributor for Norton and Ducati. And I met him at that time. I went there with the guy for some reason. I can't remember that why. But it was kind of a quiet.
Very retiring. Yeah. He's in Sun Valley now.
Sun Valley?
Yeah.
It's a little further out of town.
Yeah, a little towards Tahunga, I think. Yeah. And he's a very, very competent man. He's the sort of guy that we would get along with well, I would think. But going back to the Vincent days, I can't think of who else there was that was a sufficiently interesting character. The people over in the machine shop in Fisher's Green were generally machinists, period.
Yeah, they didn't care
And
anything
they
about
could care less whether they were making wheelbarrows or, as they did, turning brake drums for Standard Car Company. It didn't make a scrap of difference to them. They were just not in the least bit interested. It was a 3-shift operation.
Seems to me that I was over there, it seems to me that someone, maybe it was Surtees, but someone, or maybe it was you, was running a drill press.
What happened is we got to the stage where we didn't have enough business. And we were all about to be laid off. So Surtees and I were given the alternative of either leaving the company then, which we didn't want to do, or going and working, not only working on the drill presses, then subsequently going on to night shift, which was, very, very unpleasant. In fact, that was the time I decided to have enough that I needed to move on. Surtees had gone there allegedly to duck conscription into the armed forces. So he took an apprenticeship. And I heard part of the discussions between old Jack Surtees and PC Vincent, because Jack tried to tie the agreement into the provision of racing machinery for John. And that was settled by giving the Surtees an unsuccessful grey flash, which Brown had road tested, which I think had a maximum capability of about 75 miles an hour. Something was obviously very wrong with it. Which George Brown had road tested at, what was the name of the airfield north of Biggleswade in Bedfordshire? Thamesford. And he used to come back and lie about the speeds.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, because once he left and they took the machines out and tested and they found all this just phony figures. That was mainly Cliff Brown, of course. Anyway, this particular one, instead of being painted grey, had been painted silver for the New York show. And it was a really bad bike. And they gave them that. And that was the one that John took and rebuilt. Yeah. Now, it suggested that John was an ace tuner at that stage, and that's very far from the truth. Much of the work that he did was done by people in the motorcycle world. In one case, a guy called Diamond, Ken Diamond, who was a speedway man and was really capable with speedway jabs. And I had a Triumph frame, I think in 1952, which was Surtees.
Well, didn't Surtees have that originally, that Tiger 90 with the Jap engine in it?
That's exactly what it was. It had the kind of seat we talked about earlier.
Well, I think that I saw that machine at Jack's place, that very motorcycle.
It was the one I had, I bet you.
Yeah.
I had a pre-war R10 Cami AJ, which wasn't worth a damn, which I sold off. We did a trade, we took tools and a camera and all kind of anything to get rid of the damn thing. Ted and I did a deal on that. Then I bought this from Surtees. Had a spring hub at the rear, kangaroo hub. AMC tellies on the front, early Manchester Street G3L type.
Yeah. Single tube nuts over the bars on.
That's correct. It had a pre-war Maxxis Clubman front brake, which is a maximum effort would get hot.
About 5 inches. Yeah.
Just terrible.
Warm and dry.
That's right. Ribbed, looked pretty, but sprung hub on the back. Triumph Tiger 80 frame, which broke every race it was ever in. I even brazed tube in and cross-pinned it and everything, and it still broke every time it went out. A Triumph gearbox. A little tank which no one ever was able to identify as to its origin. That Triumph touring seat, which made an excellent racing pad prior to the days when we put humps on the back. The Jack was a good one. It did go well on methanol, straight methanol. But it had a
4-stud or 5-stud?
5-stud.
I had a 5-stud.
It was a good quality 5-stud. That was the best car of the bike, actually. But that was the time, and that's the reason Surtees sold it. He was more better informed in what was happening in racing circles, obviously, than I was. And he realized that there weren't going to be many dope meetings. It was when the dope meetings all started to change to 80 octane, I think. And it had an RNA carburetor on it. Now, I've suspected that what they did is that either this guy Diamond was one of the very few men in the world who could make an RNA carburetor work. You remember the RNA carburetor, remote needle carburetors? There were very few of those RNAs built, and no one really could get them right. And it may be that they did have it going, because it did run reasonably well, but I never found anyone who could even get it right. Added to which I had to change it to gasoline. 5-stud Jack, relatively long stroke, on gasoline is about as good as a G3L Maxxis. Just worthless. I really didn't have a racing machine any longer once I changed to gasoline. So I lost out on that quite badly. I took the RNA off and put an ordinary TT10 on it. And then sold it. I rode it a couple of times. I actually broke my collarbone at Aberdare. Same thing you were talking about earlier. A rider got into trouble and brought me down. Shot me up a path between the rock gardens and the tennis courts, which was kind of hairy for a moment or two. I was lucky to get away with a broken collarbone. And I don't know if you want me to digress, but it was kind of innocent because we went down there. I was going to go down with Danny. Danny had the white lining that I'd rebuilt for him. for use on sand, you know, with a Siamese pipe,
Yeah, I
small
remember that.
diameter. And that was it went very well. That was on 14:1 compression ratio. That had ordinary 32mm clip fitting. I think we got the GPs by then, I'm not sure. It was either that or a TT10, I can't remember which now.
Probably TT10,
Probably.
still early on for us.
And particularly being clip fitting, yeah, it was a. And he, I remember it had two 1200 jets, like drain pipes,
Yep.
and very remarkable machine. That tick over to about 600 RPM like a gas engine.
Yep.
We took that, what happened, we borrowed or rented an 840 Austin pickup to put his Vincent on and my Jap, and he and his wife and I trying to sit in the cab together, which is a bit cramped, but that's okay, we were friends. And someone, I think it was Manning, asked Danny to take it down. And Manning was an overbearing cat, but this was one time he didn't call the shots to me. He came over, he said, hey, he said, Thomas, not Danny, Thomas is going to take a Road Lightning down for a guy who was due to race against us at Aberdare Park. Danny and I were going to take the two bikes, keep swapping numbers so we each got a double ride at Aberdare and then at Pendine at the Sand. And I'd sand race once at David Spatchcore Cup meeting at Wallace in New Brighton. So he said, Danny said, you go and tell him. Danny wouldn't face up to it, you know. He said, you better look for another ride to get your bike down to Aberdare. He said, he's going to take this shed it down to deliver it to the man at the race circuit because he'd sent it back for non-performance. It didn't run well. Excuse me. I said, oh, who made that decision? He said, I did. I said, well, I have some news for you. First of all, I have an agreement. I paid for that. Thank you very much. And
Told you not to be kissing me.
Hold this for a second. I've got to.
See, you got my cold, didn't you?
I don't know how that could have happened.
Yeah, really.
I think I slept all night last
I
night.
know, huh? Maybe wait for long. I try it. Well, I get stores again. I might as well get the rest of my stuff because otherwise I'll have to go tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we did. Something like this. Answers. Taking